Speaking of which, speaking of, liberal conversations that are healthy, I went on Ested's show on what Democrats get wrong, America Actually. Let's take a look at the comments. Hasan jokingly glazed Obama in hopes of DSA endorsements was hilarious. The Wisconsin election wasn't a referendum on the left. It was literally a 3K vote difference. Ranked choice would absolutely transform America. Weird seeing a sober guest.
Michigan.
Listen, man, if you can't say the name, it's Abdurrahman. Keep the name out your damn mouth.
Yeah! And most recently, in Wisconsin.
You know, I always say that every day is a good day. In Wisconsin, it is a very good day.
And I know what you're saying. We've heard this story before. Moderates versus progressives, the DSA versus the establishment. But after Francesca Hong's loss in Wisconsin, it seems we should talk about this at least one more time. Because the map is telling us a mixed story. Some wins for the left, some wins for the center, and a big open question about what happens in the general election. Democrats say they welcome a Big Tent party for progressives and for moderates. But does the left agree?
What we want is a clear agenda, a clear vision for a better future.
We're going to ask Twitch streamer Hasan Piker this week on America Actually. Let's dig in. So the most prominent progressive Democrats share at least one thing in common. Hasan Piker's stream. Zohran Mamdani, AOC, Bernie Sanders, even midterms candidates like Daria Liza Avila Chevalier in New York City, or Abdul El Sayed and Francesca Hong out in the Midwest. They've all talked to Hasan Piker. And that has infuriated some establishment Democrats who argue that Piker's past controversial statements, anti-Israel commentary, and just general broiness are toxic to everyday voters. We first talked to Piker back in June and explored some of the drama that seems to surround him. But that was back when the Democratic primaries were yet to be decided. So this time, I wanted to ask Piker about more than just the primaries. How does he plan to conduct himself in a general election? And do results like Michigan prove that his politics is popular? Or do results like Wisconsin show that he's a liability? Here's our conversation. Hasan Piker is with us, unofficial mouthpiece of the left and controversial lightning rod for the center. How are you?
Both good and bad.
I imagine this is some of the reaction to Wisconsin. The last 2 weeks have produced mixed results for left-wing candidates. A big win in Michigan and a win this week in Minnesota for Peggy Flanagan, but a loss for Francesca Hong, which was a surprise in Wisconsin. What have been your takeaways from the last set of results?
I think ground game is phenomenal. There's a lot of excitement on the platform. There's a lot of excitement for the first time for change candidates. It's still a very good environment to be in if you are a socialist. The establishment does have a lot of juice still, for sure. And when they can, put together a similar strategy to what happened in 2020 against Bernie Sanders with Joe Biden, especially in a place like Wisconsin, where Tony Evers is like very clearly still a very popular governor, they were able to elevate David Crowley's campaign, who actually had dropped out and consolidated support behind Rodriguez initially, and he had to drop out because he was only performing at like 6%.
Yeah, the consolidation was swift and it was complete. Yeah. I mean, you're comparing it to 2020, in which the establishment lined up behind Joe Biden and kind of nixed that Bernie Sanders campaign in a blink of an eye. I guess for you, I just want to start with the emotion. Like, I imagine you were surprised at the result.
I never underestimate my opponents, whether they be Republicans or whether they be establishment Democrats. You have to always operate as though you're down 10 points. I don't believe in the notion that we are going to win easy victories at the end of the day. There are a lot of people, there are a lot of powerful interests at play here. There are a lot of people in positions of power that don't want to lose their seats. So they're going to fight like hell. So we have to also fight like hell. We have to fight extra hard, as a matter of fact, because, we're almost always outspent, right?
Yep. I want to ask about some of the takeaways that at least media is taking from this. I got an alert right before we started talking from the New York Times that said, a Democratic Socialist lost in Wisconsin shows the movement's surging wave might crash before rippling out from big cities. Is that wrong?
Oh, I love that. Look, people are going to have their opinions. I'll just say it like this. Abdul El Sayed's one point victory margin showed that the Democratic Socialist aligned movement or the progressive movement was in tatters. It was obviously a failure. And now David Crowley's less than 1 point victory proves that the centrist bulwark is still here and that the Democratic Socialist movement is dying. It kind of feels like it's wish casting for the most part from a lot of people who maybe want to go back to the way things used to be. My assessment on this is definitely a little bit different. I think at the end of the day, these are insurgencies, right? These are insurgent candidacies. We're talking about no name recognition for a state legislator that was entirely propped up by local Wisconsin DSA chapters. I mean, these people, they didn't have a lot of money necessarily, and they were able to defy the odds, and they continued defying the odds all the way into the end. The idea that the polls showed that Francesca was a clear front runner and was running away with this race is utterly irrelevant, especially if you were to look at this with a broader perspective, like thinking about where Democratic Socialists of America have gotten to in the last 2 years. I mean, I remember how I felt in 2024, in the aftermath of the DNC about where the American socialist movement was as opposed to where it is now. We are clearly a force to be reckoned with, and that's precisely the reason why a lot of people are paying close attention to what's going on. And I'll say it like this. The fact that the Han campaign did not have any major progressive national endorsements, and that I was like their top surrogate.
There was no Bernie Sanders endorsement. There was no AOC endorsement. That did make the Han campaign unique on that front.
Yeah, and not necessarily. I think there were a couple other races that I was also involved in that, my candidates lost, right? I mean, Shoykat Chakrabarti was another great example of this as well. It wasn't a statewide race, and obviously there's always clear local differences that play a formative role in how these races turn out. But in our experience, we've looked back at this data. There's an endorsement tracker. There's a couple different endorsement trackers out there, and it's like they'll put my endorsement up there and they'll put like AOC and Bernie Sanders, and it's very clear that like the best likelihood of success usually comes from a consolidation of national progressive forces, whether it be like outside expenditures coming from, Justice Democrats or things like that. And, with the Francesca Han campaign, I think it's a testament to their success. It's a testament to how popular the platform is in general. And one thing I will have to stress here is the salience of the electability narrative. I think that's still a real motivator for a lot of people.
Yeah, I hear that. I guess one question I wanted to ask out of these results, though, is both El Sayed's campaign and Hong's campaign did better among middle-class voters, I should say, than the data would tell us among working-class voters. Considering how central working-class and kind of bottom-up issues are to the DSA message, why has it not produced results that actually get it more working-class votes? Because that does seem to be something we've learned over the last 3-4 weeks.
Yeah, I think that we have to dramatically reconstruct how we understand what it means to be working class in this country. I think a lot of people will cast aside, and you might agree with what I'm about to say here, but we have to do away with this fantastical notion that the working class is one specific thing. I think for the longest time, people have thought about this hard hat wearing coal miner as the true working class, oftentimes white as well. And the working class is unbelievably diverse in this country, and it's also a lot more college educated than people actually give it credit for. I think partially this is because, if you look back to the 90s as opposed to right now, yes, if you had a college education, you were upwardly mobile. You were probably a professional managerial class individual that was going to be able to retire at a reasonable age. You were doing fairly well. It was a guarantee for getting a job, a good job, right? That's not the case in America any longer. There are a lot more people who have a college degree, who are downwardly mobile, who are having a very tough time in the current job market, who do not own a home, and it's seemingly less likely than before that they will ever be able to, own or purchase a home. And that is the actual working class. It's much broader, right? We've seen in Zoran's race and in Abdul's race, there's this massive middle class of working class folks that constantly get cast aside as not being a true representation of the American working class when I think like, no, that is the true representation. That is a big component of it. Now, the other side of the story, of course, is just like with Andrew Cuomo, Haley Stevens won with the wealthiest voters.
The wealthiest and the poorest.
Yeah.
Yep.
The wealthiest voters and the poorest voters. And I find that, I mean, there's no immediate answer to that question. I think that's that is a real issue to try and have more of an impact and to be able to speak to not the wealthiest voters necessarily, but the poorest voters, because these policies are policies that target them and seek to alleviate some of their concerns, some of their immediate material struggles. I think we just have more work to do in that regard. Ultimately, a lot of people, I think, especially in that category of the poorest voters, they're unbelievably busy. And perhaps some of them, like the rest of the Democratic primary electorate, is a defensive voter. The electability narrative is very important for them. Like they're locked in on what MS Now is saying is the best possible choice.
Or to say it in a more good faith way, they're locked in on what Donald Trump is doing. And maybe the people who most clearly respond to that sometimes can be centrist or establishment, or particularly when they're putting that message in front of you on television.
Yeah, no, the reason why I say it like that is you're absolutely right about the Trump thing, by the way, 100%. But we are worried about that as well. It's not like it's not like someone like myself is saying, like, I don't care about Donald Trump. I don't care if the Democrats lose. I don't care if the Democrats don't maintain a Senate majority as long as I get my message across. Like, that's ridiculous. That's never been my concern. Like, I do care. That is precisely the reason why I wanted Kamala Harris to make different choices when she was campaigning. Like, from my worldview, and I think we're going to be able to prove this in at least certain races, like, this is good policy and good politics, right? Instead, I'm sure you've traveled the country, so I'm sure you've probably had this similar mind-boggling experience where someone, especially in the primaries, will come up to you and say, I really liked, insert left insurgent candidate. I really liked their policies. But I just simply don't think other people will vote for them, so I had to vote for this other person.
Yeah, playing pundit in your head is a huge Democratic primary base activity.
Yeah, we like to call
it favorite pastime
brain.
of theirs. Yes.
Yeah, we like to call it pundit brain. A lot of Democrats, I think, have pundit brain. That's why I keep saying, like, oh, it's MS Now, it's CNN. These people are terrified of Donald Trump winning, just like we are. They're terrified of Trumpism. We are as well, right? And they're actually more in line with our agenda, and they're a part of this, but they just haven't, I guess, bought into the idea that this could be one way to more effectively destroy Trumpism in this country, effectively destroy any kind of stranglehold the Republicans have.
There's a lot in that, and I want to pull out some of it, but I want to go back to the question I just asked. I mean, I think it's important to acknowledge what you said. The definition of working class is certainly changing over the years, and I think that's important. But to the point about the poorest voters, you all have confidence, as you have laid out, that the policies are ones that suit those people, but we're not seeing the translation in votes, particularly in the primary so far. Is there something about the DSA message that misses people who didn't go to college?
I think people are very cynical. If you're working a gig economy job, you've just been destroyed, right? You've been destroyed by your circumstances. So I think there's an element of like not daring to dream as well for a lot of these voters, where they're just like, yeah, I think this guy's just selling me something. That could be part of it, right? I just don't think that the average American has any confidence in their government. So that's why I always stress the importance of good governance and its associations with democratic socialism, even at the municipal level, even when it comes to constituent services, because we have a lot of work to do to make sure that people trust their government again.
Yeah, I mean, I hear all that, and I definitely think that there is a role, and progressives have shown that this year, in an active, not just defensive government, but a proactive pitch.
Yeah. This is the primary concern. It's a broader concern beyond getting people on board with democratic socialism, is the notion that since the Reagan era, I'm from the government and I'm here to help, is a terrifying prospect for many Americans. It was a very clever mode of propaganda that Republicans put out there. And that has been the most that's been the most like top of mind concern. Americans just don't trust their government at all. They think the government is never actually helping them. There's no confidence in good governance. And we have to work to fix that. And that does have downstream positive consequences for the broader Democratic Party as well, because the Democratic Party, as opposed to the Republican Party, is the party of good governance, right? Is the party of more government, bigger government. Democrats since the 90s, unfortunately, have dropped that and have decided to go full tilt into neoliberalism, where they are also tasked with cutting government and cutting regulation. And it's awful
about what it can do for you.
Yeah.
But I wanted to come back to electability because you mentioned it. It has been something that, the establishment has successfully wielded over the last several years. And one of the arguments they make about these progressive candidates is that their association with you makes them unelectable. Candidates like Abdul El Sayed and Mamdani, they sound like you on Israel, maybe, or taxing the rich, but they don't sound like you when it comes to being complimentary about communism or Mao Zedong, who we talked about in our last conversation. Is Wisconsin not evidence that some of those statements may have an electoral cost? Is Wisconsin not evidence that maybe you're a drag on electability?
No, I don't think so. Or at least the campaigns don't seem to think so. And a big part of that is because these close races are regarded as like, upset victories for either party or either faction of the party, because polling was just completely out of whack.
Yeah, you're saying it's an expectation game more than you think.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. And it's ironic because like I never represent that level of confidence until it's done. You know, I'm always very, very nervous until the victory is announced, right? Until the last vote is counted. And yet there is definitely an expectation game there. And when those expectations are subverted in either direction, that becomes the driving media narrative. I think the fact that the Abdul race was so close meant that, the fact that I was able to bring in the under 45 crowd early on and fundraise in key moments probably helped a lot in driving him across the finish line.
I hear what you're saying. You're saying there's evidence of you helping those candidates, particularly maybe young people.
Yeah.
And you don't think that the results in their closeness show some need for the big Piker step back or something like that.
Yeah, and I've explained this a million times over, which no one seems to care about, but like I don't actually appreciate doing the travel and the rallies are fun, but the reality of the matter is from a pure content perspective, if I'm looking at it from like a commentator, I mean, I have far bigger viewership. I make more money sitting at home, like I'm doing this specifically because I do think it helps. And I want people to participate in electoral democracy in much more meaningful ways, because I am a firm and committed believer that regardless of where my politics are, regardless of what my worldview looks like, I think in the interim, first of all, democracy is good, but also in the interim, I think it's important for us to participate in it instead of casting it aside. One thing that I always say is it's the age-old notion that like if your vote didn't matter, the Republicans wouldn't stop you so aggressively, right? And this goes for not only the black vote, but just all voters in general, and especially working class voters. If your vote was utterly irrelevant, if this machine was going to churn out whatever results it wants to, then they wouldn't spend this much time and this much effort trying to make sure that you don't go out and vote.
I think that's been a motivating message. But your point is also to agitate. As you told us the last time you were with us, I saw your speech to the College Democrats of America in July 2026. And I also saw that you wore an outfit reminiscent of the former Chinese communist dictator, which sparked some controversy. You got your suit on today, but those things will find themselves in Republican attack ads and have angered some Democrats. I'm asking about actions like that. Do those things make it harder for Democrats to win in November?
No, it's entirely dependent on how they use this opportunity. I think it's ironically a good opportunity, right? Because That's precisely what happened with Abdul al-Sayed's race as well. But Abdul was so good, just like Zoran was, and just like Zoran still is, at reframing that moment in the spotlight to turn that into a moment where you can deliver your policy platform. The reality of the matter is these things are immaterial. Like I know that people try to turn them into like major points of manufactured outrage and controversy, but I saw the response to the suit that I was wearing. So the Zhongshan suit. It's not just Mao Zedong, obviously.
But you know what you're doing. You
No,
know,
for
I mean,
sure.
you know good and well.
I do, and I really love that suit, by the way. I mean, it's tailored. I got it tailored in Shanghai from the family that actually invented the Zhongshan suit. Like it has significance for me. But the way that people were looking at that, the way that Facebook boomers were responding to the Fox News comment on that news hit was very reflective of where Americans are broadly, where the base is broadly, where they almost harken it back to the Obama tan suit. There was a lot of like Obama tan suit comparisons, but they were like, the president's a pedophile. Who cares what this one random guy is wearing as a suit? And I think most voters are there. But having said that, on the other side of it, voters will respond to what they're seeing in the media. So if they're constantly seeing this, there will be, just as much as there's backlash to the negative coverage all the time from the base that go, okay, enough. Like, we don't care about this guy. Who cares? Talk to us about the real issues. There will definitely be a lot of people who are concerned with it. But I don't believe that concern is going to cause people to stay home.
But the question is not really whether they stay home, or does that motivate them to vote for the other candidate? Does that motivate them to vote for Stevens? Does that motivate them to vote for Crowley?
And no, I don't think that is what, that's what allowed Haley Stevens to perform as well as she did. Especially in comparison to the Gretchen Whitmer endorsement and Gary Peters' endorsement, the outbound
other things matter more.
Senator. Of course, they mattered a lot more. So it's always a calculation, right? It's always a calculation for the campaigns. They poll me in these districts. It's not like these guys are, out in the water, totally blind, where they're like, this is Hasan guy. Like, this is an
intentional choice around the audience. I think it's pretty clear that progressives think they have a bottom-up message that works, and it's clear that they find candidates like Janet Mills or Haley Stevens inherently kind of ill-fitting for that because of their policies. But it seems less clear to me with someone like Barack Obama, one of the more popular politicians in the party, if not the most popular politician in the country on the Democratic side. But you don't hear progressives talk about Obama-ism with much love. Even El Sayed was quite critical of how Obama used his time in office. So I wanted to use that as a proxy for this larger kind of debate about the Democrats' direction. Do you think Barack Obama is a good model for the Democrats to follow?
Are you talking about Barack Obama on the campaign trail, or are you talking about Barack Obama, the administrator, the president?
Wasn't the tailor so happy that you wore a suit that he printed out a picture of you wearing it and put it inside his store? Yes, he did. And I love that suit, and I'm gonna keep wearing it too. I'm not gonna stop wearing the suit, just for the record. I just wear it to like special events, right? I really like it. It has special significance for me. It's a reminder of my trip to China, which I, enjoyed. It's a great suit, and I look good, I look good in it. I'm not going to stop wearing it. I don't care if people are, I don't care if people take it in a very, like, I would go so far as to say xenophobic, direction.
Give me a quick answer on the both and how you see those differently.
Okay, Barack Obama, the campaigner, is fantastic. I mean, that's, hope and change. It was literally the model that I think DSA candidates are somewhat abiding by right now without even recognizing it. And I know that's going to be very problematic of me to say. People are going to get very mad at me because they only think about Obama, the competent president, right? Obama, the 2008 bailout, Obama with drone strikes and all those associations.
Obama with deportations. Like, all of those are big leftist critiques.
Yeah, and I would never bring up those critiques because I love Barack Hussein Obama because I really want him to start endorsing DSA candidates, and that would do really well for his legacy overall, I think. I love
But
Barack
what are the parts
Obama.
of Obama, the administrator, that you do think the left is breaking from?
No, absolutely. I think that Obama had the popular mandate. The last time any president has had a popular mandate was Barack Obama. And I think there is there are a good deal of people who feel like that was squandered to a certain degree. And I think it was an uphill battle with a lot of internal division and a lot of corporate influence as well. Like that is my most charitable interpretation of events is a guy who like actually understands the situation and did at times stick his neck out.
What's the uncharitable version of the Obama reading?
The uncharitable version? I'm not going to say anything bad about my man Obama. He has a great three-pointer. He's so handsome. He has so much aura. And I always think about how good it would be if Barack Obama started jumping for left candidates.
Let me move on with the rest of my time. I want to ask you about.
I would never. He's just trying to lay a trap right there. You see that? It's messed up. Messed up. Yeah. Obama is my GOAT, and I love him a lot.
A couple things that Neera Tanden told us earlier in the week. She says she is committed to a big tent, that vote blue no matter who is something that she believes in no matter what. I wanted to ask, do you share that same commitment?
Broadly, yeah, I think so. I mean, there are, it's obviously if you're asking me about like John Fetterman, it's like, there are people who don't fall into that big tent Democratic Party narrative. So I've always been a big advocate of whipping votes and like punishing naysayers. I mean, this was a big point that I brought up during the Biden administration about like punishing Kyrsten Sinema, punishing Joe Manchin. Like, I don't think Democrats do that all the time. And I don't think that Democrats are also as invested, establishment Democrats are as invested in the vote blue no matter who paradigm, because it's no longer working as effectively as it used to. Because, sometimes you have insurgents that win. And the reason why I say this is because I'm much more favorable to Crowley in the aftermath of Hong's defeat than Neera has been towards Abdul al-Sayed. And that's the Senate majority.
So you're much more charitable to the establishment candidates than you think the establishment voices are charitable to the progressives.
1,000,000%.
I guess I hear you. I'm saying Neera Tanden says el-Sayed wins. He campaigned with Hasan Piker. She didn't necessarily love it, but she's going to support him in the general because beating Republicans is what's most important. Would you support a Democratic nominee for president that was, awash in AIPAC money, or who didn't support Medicare for all, but J.D. Vance is on the other side?
Yeah, you're gonna say that this is a cop-out, but I'm gonna deliver the same line that I delivered to CNN as well. Not gonna be a problem.
Why?
It's like asking me, because it's the equivalence of, from my position, asking if I would support a Democratic primary candidate that wins, that is like super pro-Israel and awash in AIPAC money, is like asking, will we have a pro-Second Amendment, pro-gun rights, and anti-abortion
I don't know about that. I definitely think the sentiment shift on Israel has been real, but the red lines are not clear across the base. It's not like there's a universal agreement about not selling defensive weapons. There might be a universal agreement that Israel did some bad stuff in Gaza, but it doesn't seem like there is a clarity on the question of solutions. I guess I'm asking, it seems possible that the next Democratic nominee is maybe more middle of the road than even some of the midterms candidates we saw.
The salience of the electability argument is chipped away every single day, or rather, it's being now weaponized more effectively against the establishment because it is the correct argument. The Bernie would have won, the Bernie would have won narrative from 2016 has unironically been channeled by a lot, at least in my experience, this is anecdotal, by a lot of people who are older voters who are now coming to terms with that reality, that left populism isn't this like scary thing that's electability poison. It's actually quite the opposite. And the more we prove that in the general, the easier this is going to be for us. And especially when it comes to Israel, like I said, I think the Israel issue, there's nuances to the Israel issue as well. But having said that, I think broadly, any kind of like sympathetic approach to Israel in 2028 will be electoral poison. You won't be able to make it out of the Democratic primary. So it's not even a concern for me at all.
Does this confidence hold if el-Sayed doesn't win the general?
Yeah. 100%.
Okay.
But I don't think that's going to be an issue either.
The story of the summer has been the Democratic Civil War. Now that the most important primaries are over, what do you think is the result? You calling it the truce?
A truce in what regard? I mean, I voted for Adam Schiff. Okay, like that's my senator. Like, what are we doing? You know, that's why it's so funny when I have these different forces. There are people to my left who say I'm a sheepdog for the DNC.
Yeah.
I'm a collaborator with the enemy. But the broadest message that I hear from mainstream outlets that are having these consultants on is that, like, we are an aberration. We are not a part of this movement. We've never been a part of this movement. It's like, we haven't stopped being a part of this movement. What is this movement? Is it the brand of the Democratic Party, or is it what the voters actually want? What we want is for the voters' desires to be expressed. What we want is a clear agenda, a clear vision for a better future. And let me tell you something. Okay. After my experience hands-on with some of these campaigns all around the country, I have begun to realize something.
I'm ready for this.
A big part of the reason why the Democrats never have a bold vision or an agenda is because they have the easiest time hitting the electability argument in the primary and then the harm reduction argument in the general.
I hear you.
Right?
Yeah, I hear you.
And I think that was best demonstrated by James Carville's now pivotal New York Times op-ed, where he said, like, punish the voters, basically. Let the voters see what it looks like when Republicans are in charge. That was a big part of the reason why we actually were able to seize on this moment and be like, no, see, they're telling you they're going to roll over and die. And that's the reason why Chuck Schumer's popularity is in the gutter. That's the reason why Hakeem Jeffries is not nationally popular either. And that's because people wanted more. People wanted the Democrats to fight back. They wanted the Democrats to represent.
Does that come across? Do you guys understand this? Like, Democrats have been made lazy by the fact that their route to electoral success has always revolved around making the simplest argument with no agenda, no vision whatsoever. I 100% believe that. Like, if you can win by just saying, we are the electable candidates, we are the only candidates that can defeat the Republicans in the primary, and then when you get into the general, you say, well, we're much better than the Republicans. Look at how violent the Republicans are. Then you become super lazy. You don't have to have a vision. You don't have to have an agenda. It's the easiest grift of all time. That's how we arrived at the last, multiple decades of Democratic ineptitude.
Them and they lost confidence in the party.
I want to untangle what you just said. Like, what the argument you're making is, and I think it's a true one, honestly, is that establishment moderate Democrats over the last couple years, or maybe even longer, have basically run the same playbook throughout these elections. That in the primary, and it works. It works successfully.
It works.
In the primaries, it's about the scary left and how unelectable they are, and then the general, it's, hey, we're better than these Republicans. And at no point, to your argument, is that really an argument for what they will provide people. At no point is that an argument that centers voters and their concerns. And it has been clear, and I honestly think Neera even spoke to this, that there is a struggle independently for the moderate establishment lane to speak to the reasons of why Trumpism exists in the first place.
Yeah. And they have no answer for this, and yet we've had an answer for this even before Trumpism became a thing. And that's my argument. We've had the same exact answer since the 90s. We've had the same exact answer since the ironic third-way neoliberal pivot under Bill Clinton, welfare reform, NAFTA. Like, it's not an accident that the broadest base of the white working class especially left the Democratic Party in droves over the course of those years. Part of that is because labor unions were gutted and destroyed. Manufacturing jobs were shipped overseas. We used to have an industry in this country, and the workers, the industrial workers, would also go and participate in local politics in very meaningful ways. They'd have
that line from The Wire. We used to build things here,
and that's not like that's not a crazy argument. It's ironic because I feel like Trumpism in some respects, even down to the white nativist anti-immigrant agenda, is hearkening back to like the 90s Democratic Party. It's very interesting that they present this like totally new right populist message, but down to the trade protectionism and even like the aggressive posture against migration patterns, you're looking at like a 90s Democrat.
Yeah. That's my biggest truc. It's not wrong to say that, like, MAGA nowadays, like what Trump represents or how Trump campaigns, rather, like how he talks about defending certain industries and you know, his anti-immigration stance as well is literally a 90s Democrat. Donald Trump is a 90s Democrat. This isn't to say that the 90s Democrats were right, especially on everything, but it is ironically what the Democrats used to fight for in the 90s. And I guess it makes sense because he was a Democrat in the 90s.
Positioning is one that is supposed to be populist and sort of sounds like where Democrats used to be. Hasan, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again soon.
All right. Thank you for having me.
So after talking with Piker again, it's clear that there's not much daylight between moderates and progressives on the question of the Big Tent. Neera Tanden says she'll vote blue no matter who, and Hasan says the same thing. Everyone's in agreement, at least for now. But it's also clear that the left still has an electability burden. The establishment's playbook in Wisconsin worked, and Piker knows that and is adjusting. But my biggest takeaway from a year of Democratic civil war? Well, it's a mess. The landscape is still undecided, and both sides, moderates and progressives, have a lot of reasons to feel confident heading into the 2028 presidential primary. So, after a year of midterms primary battles, the fight continues, and in some ways, it's really just beginning. Because
I would tell chatters in this community not to cast aside the vote blue no matter who argument for the upcoming elections. Just like the electability argument isn't the worst argument to make, because a lot of people believe in it. And things can change. Things are changing. Okay? That's all I'm saying. Because the reason why I'm saying this is because a lot of voters in the Democratic Party, especially older voters in the Democratic Party, are motivated. They're primed by the electability argument. And in instances where someone from the left flank can be the electability rod, like Bernard Sanders, like AOC, the broad base of support will actually see that, recognize it as valuable, and will very quickly assume that that left flank, that left insurgent candidate is the electable one. Okay? Francesca Hong wasn't able to convince voters that she was the true electability candidate. And the reason why she wasn't able to do that is because she did not get the Bernard Sanders or AOC endorsement. If she had gotten those endorsements,
folks, it's midterm.
If she had gotten those endorsements, at least one, there would be plenty of voters who would be convinced that she is electable enough. Okay? That's the argument that I'm presenting. You understand? There's now two poles in the party, in the base. People who think Bernie would have won, and people who still think Hillary Clinton was the electable candidate, but you know the broad voters betrayed her. These are the two different polls broadly. This is obviously reductive. I'm not, this is just very broad analysis. Okay? But there are a lot of people who have crossed over from the Hillary would have won camp to the Bernie would have won camp. A lot of older voters. So now Bernie has unbelievable amounts of influence over the base. And he doesn't want to wield it. He doesn't want to burn it, right? He doesn't want to empty out his clip by making a choice with Francesca Hong, because I think ultimately, this is pure speculation, but I think ultimately Bernie thought that Francesca would be too difficult of a race to promote, especially given the limited power that we have. We can't be overextended. That's what Bernie's thinking. And he's like his full focus is on Abdul al-Sayed, which is the correct choice anyway. And for that reason, I think he was probably worried that Francesca Hong would be too difficult a race to push. He looked at the polls and saw her as a toss-up. And that's the reason why he made that choice. So it's not dissimilar to Zoran telling Chiose not to run against Hakeem Jeffries. It's kind of like that. I think it was wrong, by the way. I think that it was the wrong decision. Just so you understand. If he endorsed her, she would have won. I'm talking about in the general. I think the reason why he didn't endorse Francesca Hong is because of the fact that she was the only toss-up out of all of the other candidates in the general in Wisconsin. And it's a gubernatorial race. It's different. It's a different seat. It's one that has nothing to do in many respects with the makeup of the Senate, with the makeup of the House of Representatives. So that's the difference. It would have drawn so much aggro to the data center guy is electable. Guys, I'm just telling you what I think Bernie's calculation is. I haven't spoken to him about what his calculation is. I'm purely speculating, and I don't even agree with this calculation. I'm just telling you what I think he was. I'm trying to give you the best argument for why Bernie Sanders did not endorse Francesca Hong. Okay? I'm steel manning his position. Putting up the kitchen window and cooking lunch while listening to Hasan.
The consequences of that are, I don't know, mobilizing the peasant class or Adolf Hitler's concentration. We literally have the concentration camps already. We are already in the process.
Okay, that looks like fire. It's funny because I do the same with podcasts. Hi Hasan, Bernie Sanders here. You're correct. But giving a reason for Bernie's decision makes it seem like it was a good decision. We don't know why he didn't endorse. The fact that he didn't endorse says it all. Dog, I do analysis around these parts. What do you mean? It hurts your feelings to think about why people make decisions that you disagree with? What are you, a baby? That's so funny. I'm sorry. You're not allowed to engage in analysis around these parts, especially if it makes my baby brain hurt.